Virgin Voyages has just launched their brand new cruise ship, the Brilliant Lady, and I was on board her maiden voyage out of New York City. Now, this wasn't just another cruise. It was the very first time that this ship set sail on a full revenue sailing, and I got to experience it all from the moment she left Manhattan. The energy on board was electric, it was palpable, the ship is colorful and bold, and honestly, unlike anything else at sea. But the question is, does the Brilliant Lady live up to the hype? Now, if you've been watching my channel, you know I've sailed everything from mega ships like the Utopia and Star of the Seas to more intimate cruises. And I've sailed on Virgin one other time, about a couple of years ago on Valiant Lady, and was actually surprised by that cruise experience. Virgin's branding is all about breaking the rules of traditional cruising. No buffets, no kids, and a whole lot of nightlife. But when you put all that on a brand new ship making her debut, it can either be groundbreaking or it can feel like style over substance. If you've watched my cruise reviews before, you know I like to break things down using my steps method. That way, you get a clear, structured look at the entire cruise experience. The good, the not so good, and everything in between. And here's what that looks like. STEPS is, of course, an acronym where the first S is for ship, her design, her layout, and overall vibe on board. T is for taste, because food is a huge part of the Virgin Voyages experience. E is for entertainment, the shows, the nightlife, the experiences. P is for the ports, the itinerary, and the destination that we visited on this maiden or mermaiden voyage. And the last S is for service, the crew, and the way they brought it all together. So that's how I'm going to be reviewing Brilliant Lady, and trust me, there were some real highs, but also some surprising lows. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know if this new Virgin Voyages ship is for you. Hello everyone, my name is Zach, I am The Traveling Man, and this is my official review of the newest ship in the world, the Brilliant Lady. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe down below for more cruise reviews and adventures to come, and drop a comment below and let me know, do you think Virgin Voyages is really reinventing cruising, or do you think it's just marketing magic? Let me know what you think, and let's go ahead and kick off this review with the most obvious category, the ship itself, the S for ship, because Brilliant Lady makes a first impression that you're certainly not going to forget. Now, don't let that gray exterior fool you. Once you step on board, Brilliant Lady is a beautiful ship. I remember the first video I watched of one of these Virgin ships and saw that exterior, and I thought, this looks so boring. But the ship is full of color, unique spaces, and little design touches that make her stand out from just about any other ship I've sailed before. And my favorite part of the ship, hands down, was my stateroom. I stayed in one of their solo insider staterooms, and this is officially my new favorite cabin that's designed solely for solo cruisers. Now, a lot of cruise lines have these, and they're just built for one person, for solo cruisers, and cozy doesn't even begin to describe the room on Virgin Voyages. I could just cocoon myself into the bed, and it felt like my own little retreat at sea. You add in that in-room tablet that they have, it controls the lighting, the climate in the room, and the TV, plus all of the entertainment options. I mean, so many movies and television series and channels that you can watch. More than any I've ever seen at sea. It's built right into the system. And honestly, with all those things, I didn't want to leave my cabin some days. Now, I normally book a balcony on all my cruises. I love to stay in a balcony, love to have views of the ocean. But honestly, on Virgin Voyages, I can't imagine cruising with them and not having this room again. It was absolute perfection. And I've actually booked it again for the future. That's how much I loved it. But just walking around Brilliant Lady, you notice the details that elevate the experience. For example, there's a scent near the roundabout, which is Virgin's main atrium area, which is incredible. It's a light, perfume-like fragrance that just instantly makes the space feel luxurious, and it's just so distinctly Virgin. You walk around and you'll smell it. It's just Virgin Voyages, you know? And then there's how versatile the venues are. The Red Room, which is Virgin's main theater, is unlike any other main theater at sea. It transforms depending on the event with different seating layouts and staging options, so no two shows in there are going to feel exactly the same. One other thing to note, however, if you're into casinos, Brilliant Lady's casino is actually tiny compared to most other cruise lines. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but don't come expecting a Vegas at sea vibe. Now, what I really loved was the amount of outdoor spaces on this ship. Up on deck 16, you've got what I call the adult playground. It's an area that's complete with swings and seesaws and loungers. It's quirky, it's fun, and it's just totally Virgin. And on deck 15, just aft of the galley, there's this covered outdoor dining space where you can go out there and enjoy meals while watching the wake. It's just a great place to hang out and just a great touch. Now, speaking of the wake, let's talk about the dock. The dock is located on deck 7 at the very back of the ship. And this is one of the most beautiful places, I think, on board the ship. There's tons of comfy seating out there with a perfect view out over the water. And it's easily one of my favorite places to just relax and soak it all in. Now, Brilliant Lady's layout is nearly identical to her sister ships. I'm talking about Scarlet Lady, Valiant Lady, and Resilient Lady. But there is one important difference. This ship was designed structurally to pass through the Panama Canal, which opens the door for future West Coast and Alaska sailings. Now that's exciting because it means that Virgin isn't just staying in the Caribbean and Europe anymore. They're going to be branching out and sailing in more locations. And while the ship itself is stunning, what really makes Virgin stand out is how much is included on their ships. I'm talking about gratuities and Wi-Fi and soda, water, which includes carafes in your stateroom. They put carafes every day of water in your stateroom, which is different. You might say, well, water's pretty basic, but most cruise lines will charge you per bottle of water, and some cruise lines don't even include water on their beverage package. Virgin also includes all dining venues. I'm going to say that again. All dining venues, and we'll talk about that in a minute when I talk about food. All fitness classes and all entertainment, they're built right into the fare. So you know what you're going to expect when you get on board one of their ships. They're not going to nickel and dime you, which I really appreciate. Again, different from the other cruise lines. And of course, Virgin Voyages is strictly adults only. No kids on board, which really shapes the entire atmosphere. Now, I also have to mention how spotless this ship was. Yes, she's a brand new ship, but Brilliant Lady had just wrapped up a 2-week transatlantic crossing. This was a friends and family invite only sailing before I got on the ship, and she still looked absolutely pristine. Every day I would wake up and the ship would just be so clean. They do such a great job of keeping her clean, and I can honestly say this is the cleanest cruise ship that I've ever sailed on. And at the end of the day, there's so much to love about Brilliant Lady, from the staterooms to the outdoor spaces, from the vibe on board, the great vibe, not just the crew, but also the people sailing on board who were just so happy to be there, to all the little details that Virgin includes. Brilliant Lady truly stands apart, and that's why for the very first time ever on my channel doing these cruise reviews, I'm going to give a ship a perfect score, a 5 out of 5 for Brilliant Lady. Virgin Voyages absolutely nailed it with Brilliant Lady. Now let's move on to the tea and steps for food or taste. And honestly, food is one of the highlights of sailing with Virgin Voyages. They've completely thrown out the traditional main dining room and buffet model, and instead, they've created something, again, completely different, completely unique. And from the very first bite, the food on Brilliant Lady was amazing. It's creative, it's unique, and it feels like real dining, but at sea. For brunch one day, I actually had a chicken sandwich with purple aioli on it on a black bun. Now, where else are you going to find that on a cruise ship? Tell me, where are you going to find that on a cruise ship? So Virgin is doing dining differently, and it really shows, and honestly, it really pays off for them. Now, there are 6 distinct restaurants that make up the main dining rooms, and I ate at 4 of them on this sailing. We had 5 nights, but I was only able to go 4 nights and ate in the galley one night. The newest addition on board Brilliant Lady is Rojo, which replaces Razzle Dazzle as one of the core dining venues. Rojo offers Spanish-inspired tapas and small plates. Now, while the octopus and jamon were standouts to me, my pork ribs were just okay, but the cheesecake that I had for dessert, I just have to say, was wow. It was hands down one of the best cheesecakes that I've ever had in my entire life, anywhere, cruise ship or not. It was creamy, it was rich, and it was totally unique. Again, very Virgin. I also dined at the Test Kitchen, which is Virgin's experimental multi-course experience. The food here was still good. The mushroom course was outstanding. That was like one of the appetizers. And my main, the beef tenderloin, was tender and flavorful. And the chocolate cake that I had at the end was gooey and decadent, and definitely my favorite part of the entire meal. But here's the thing. I had dined on Test Kitchen on Valiant Lady. I actually dined there a couple times on Valiant Lady and didn't really care that much for it. The menu, it was the same menu that I had on Brilliant Lady, but I just didn't like it. They actually have a course that's peas and an egg yolk, and you're supposed to sop that up with some bread, and it's just a little weird. And a lot of people have complained about it online. I've seen these complaints before, but they're still using this same menu and all the same menus in Test Kitchen as on the other Virgin ships. And on a brand new ship, I was just hoping for new menus to keep things a little bit fresh and new. Now let's talk about pink agave, and this, for me, is the real star here. The food was phenomenal. The service was the fastest and the best I had all cruise, from the spiced nuts that they come and put on all the tables for you to munch on while you're waiting on your food, to the potatoes that they serve with chorizo, the ribeye that I had for my main, which was smothered in melted cheese, and a bread pudding that was downright heavenly. Every course here really hit the mark. Now, if you're sailing on Brilliant Lady, you definitely do not want to miss Pink Agave. I think it's the star restaurant, so make sure you get a reservation for that before you sail. Now, the Wake is another one of Virgin's signature venues. The clam chowder and wedge salad that I had in there were delicious, and the twice-baked potatoes and grilled mushrooms were excellent sides. But my salmon that I had for my main was a little disappointing. They actually asked me how I wanted it cooked, which I've never had them ask for salmon before. And when I requested it medium well, it came out very dry and very tough. Now, maybe that's my own fault, but again, I've never been asked how I wanted my salmon cooked before. So, not really a great experience there, but everything else was absolutely solid at the Wake. Now, instead of a traditional buffet, Virgin offers the galley. This is a food hall concept with different counters serving everything from sandwiches and paninis to gourmet dishes. On my last night, I actually had a beef Wellington in there. Yes, beef Wellington on the buffet. And it was really good. It wasn't just one of these throwaway meals like you get on other cruise ship buffets. They've also got a burger bar in the galley that has daily specials, daily burgers that are different, and a 24/7 diner-inspired spot that serves breakfast. Yes, 24/7 breakfast in the galley on Virgin Voyages. And the desserts that they have in there at the place called the Sweet Spot, well, it's easily the best desserts, hands down, that I've had on any ship buffet. I mean, it's premium quality and really on par with specialty restaurants that you're going to find on other cruise ships. So you got to grab some desserts in there if you're sailing on Brilliant Lady at the Sweet Spot. Just fantastic. I also tried the brunch at Razzle Dazzle, and it did not disappoint. The cauliflower starter that I had was amazing. The chicken sandwich that I mentioned earlier was one of the best chicken sandwiches I've ever had in my life. They actually use, it seemed like they were using chicken thighs, so using dark meat for that chicken, and it was breaded perfectly, but it was so juicy because it was dark meat. I loved it. I even tried to go back to Razzle Dazzle another day just to get this chicken sandwich again, but unfortunately, brunch reservations are tough to get on board the ship. I'll say that. And depending on your cabin type, you can book dining either 45 or 60 days before you cruise, and you're definitely going to want to, because I actually got waitlisted that second time I wanted to go to Razzle Dazzle for brunch, and I never even cleared the wait list and didn't get to go again. So make sure you plan again if you're sailing on Brilliant Lady or any of the other lady ships. Get on the app, book your dining before the cruise, and if you don't get what you want, as soon as you board the ship, join the Wi-Fi, make those reservations. And then if you still don't get what you want, then I recommend you constantly check the app throughout the sailing, because stuff's constantly popping up available because people are canceling their dining reservations. Now, one last mention when it comes to food, the snacks at the Social Club are incredible. They have things like hot wings and popcorn, sandwiches, and even a full case of sweets. But my personal favorite are the cereal bars. They're such a fun, unique treat. This is actually like Fruity Pebble cereal bar, or Fruity Pebble Rice Krispie treat is how I can relate it to. And it's so good. I ate at least 2 or 3 of those every day of the cruise. And here's the kicker about all of this food. All of the dining is included on Virgin Voyage. There are no upcharges. There are no specialty dining fees. On Virgin Voyages, every single restaurant is included as part of your cruise fare. And now you combine that with the variety, the creativity, and the quality, and it's easy to see why food is such a highlight on Virgin Voyages. And that's why I'm giving the Tea for Taste on Brilliant Lady a 4.8 out of a 5. It's nearly perfect and easily one of the best dining experiences at sea. Now for the other highlight of the experience, the E for entertainment. Now, just like with dining, Virgin does things differently than other cruise lines, and it really shows here. There's always something happening on board the ship, from unique game shows to full-blown productions. And I love that some of the big stage shows even take place in the middle of the day on a sea day. Yes, even on a sea day, there's plenty of entertainment and they're taking their big shows to the stage in the middle of the day, which is awesome. You never feel like there's downtime unless you want there to be, unless you want to take some time to relax. There's something going on for you. Now, one of my favorite events was the music game show that they had. It had rounds like Finish the Lyric and a pop culture quiz, and it really got the whole crowd involved in it. Everyone was laughing and singing along, and it just felt so fun and inclusive. And then on the main stage in the Red Room, I saw Out of Time. This was a production show filled with singing and dancing. It wasn't like the Broadway style shows you get on the other lines. This one had its own Virgin spin, and I appreciated how different it felt. Now, the Red Room itself is such a cool, flexible venue, and they use it for different types of shows. It's the main theater on board, but it keeps things fresh, being such a versatile venue. Now, the festival stage brought in guest performers from musicians to magicians to comedians, and each act had its own flair, and it was a nice change of pace from the ship's in-house productions. But without a doubt, the most popular show on board the entire ship was Murder in the Manor. This was a murder mystery with an 80s twist, and when I say it was popular, I mean lines stretched from midship to the aft, with not everyone getting in. Not everyone got to see this show because it was so popular, and it was that big of a deal around the ship. The mix of live acting, audience participation, and 80s music made it one of the standout events of this entire cruise. And another highlight for me was the Diva Goes West, featuring the ship's resident drag queen, Dixie Crystals. This show blended drag with country music, and Dixie absolutely crushed it. The diva also did a cabaret set one evening in On the Rocks, that's the atrium bar on the ship, and it was a delight. It was funny, sassy, and so uniquely Virgin Voyages. Now, entertainment wasn't limited on the ship to the theaters. I loved seeing activities like dodgeball up on the sports deck. I hadn't seen people play dodgeball since I was probably in middle school, but loved seeing that they bring passengers together in such a playful way. So, the bottom line is, entertainment on Virgin Voyages is amazing. There's always something to do, something to see, and something that will appeal to everyone on board. It's fresh, it's fun, it's truly one of Virgin's strongest features, and if you're hesitant about Virgin Voyages, maybe you feel like it's too much of a party atmosphere, it's not going to be your vibe. Well, there's certainly plenty of opportunities to party on Virgin, let's be clear about that. But you don't have to party. You don't have to be out there if you want to. They have great staterooms on the ship. They have quiet spaces on the ship where you can go and relax instead. So don't feel like I'm saying all this entertainment's great and it's loud and it's unique. That means the entire ship is going to be loud and you're going to feel uncomfortable the entire time. There's certainly quiet places you can go to get away from that. So just know the entire thing is poised for party at any time, but that doesn't mean you have to be partying the entire time. So for all these reasons, that's why I'm giving the E for Entertainment on Brilliant Lady a perfect 5 out of 5 rating. Now next up is the P for Ports, and the truth is, this cruise was really all about the ship. That was the destination. We left New York City and had about a day and a half at sea before making an evening arrival into Bermuda. And while I absolutely love Bermuda as a destination, certainly a cruise destination, I actually only stepped off the ship just briefly to grab some exterior night shots of the ship. We left the island the very next afternoon at 3 p.m., which gave us less than 24 hours there, before sailing about another day and a half back to New York. Now, Bermuda is a fantastic place to visit, but honestly, it deserves more time than this itinerary gave us. You really don't have a whole lot of time to get out because you arrive in the late afternoon, you have just a couple of hours for an excursion that first evening, and then just a few hours the next morning before the 3 p.m. departure. So, for this cruise, the port experience was really secondary to the Brilliant Lady herself, and for that reason, I'm not going to give a rating here at all. The ship was the star of this trip. Now finally, let's talk about that second S, the last Eps in the steps, and that is the service. And honestly, this is where I had my biggest concern on Brilliant Lady. The service itself wasn't that bad. There were a few hiccups around the ship being its first cruise, but the speed of dining really stood out in a huge and negative way. Meals in the restaurant were slow. Sometimes the meals would stretch to nearly 2 hours, which is just crazy. On the first night that I went to Rojo, the new restaurant, even with the reservation, they still sat me at the bar. I walked in and said, I have a reservation, and they were like, great. They were like, we're going to set you at the bar. And I'm like, even though I have a reservation, they're like, yeah, you're one person. Let's set you back there. And I actually ended up that night there in the restaurant for about an hour and a half before I was done because the speed of the service was just so slow. Now, I mentioned how much I enjoyed the brunch and razzle dazzle, but that was another spot where service dragged and led to such long waits. I was in there for over an hour, and it took 45 minutes just to get my chicken sandwich that I talked about. But outside of dining, though, the crew was fantastic. Every interaction that I had was warm and friendly, and you could really tell that the crew was just genuinely happy to be there. And I think that's part of Virgin's culture. They allow their crew members to express themselves. They let them show off their tattoos and their piercings. They don't make them wear sleeves to cover that up. And because of that, they're able to bring their personalities to work in a way that you really don't see on other cruise line. And that authenticity really shines through, and it makes a difference. Now, some of the hiccups on board are probably due to this being a maiden voyage, and I do expect things to improve as the crew finds their rhythm and learns how to work together. But since I want this to be an accurate, honest, and reflective review of my actual experience, I'm going to give service on Brilliant Lady a 3.5 out of a 5 rating. Now, when we factor all the steps elements together, that's going to give an overall score for the Brilliant Lady of a 4.65 out of a 5 rating. Now, that 0.65 is an important distinction to make because this is actually just shy of my steps record for the best cruise experience I've had. That was a 4.73 on Norwegian Aqua. But Brilliant Lady still takes the highest ship rating I've ever given with that perfect 5 out of 5. And that's really saying something right there. So here's the bottom line on Virgin Voyages Brilliant Lady. This ship is an absolute stunner. From the cozy stateroom I had to the incredible food and the non-stop entertainment, it's a cruise experience that feels fresh, different, and honestly unlike anything else at sea. Virgin has carved out their own lane, and Brilliant Lady proves they're not slowing down anytime soon. Now, of course, it wasn't all perfect. The service in the restaurants was slow at times. And again, I'll chalk some of that up to it being her maiden voyage. But overall, I walked away absolutely impressed. This ship was built for adults who want a mix of relaxation, fun, and a little bit of edge. And for me, it delivered in a way that just has me itching to go on my next Virgin voyage. And in fact, I've already booked it. I booked it on board this sailing. That's how much of a good time I was having and how great of an experience I had on board Virgin Voyages and Brilliant Lady. And now I want to hear from you. Would you sell everything I've presented here? Would you sell on Virgin Voyages? And do you think the Brilliant Lady lives up to the hype that it has? Drop your thoughts down in the comments because I love hearing what you all think about cruises and cruise experiences. And if you enjoyed this review, please be sure that you go down below, hit that like button. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We got more content just like this to come very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next adventure.